You're a
That's right.
19-time Jeopardy champion.
When I watch Jeopardy with somebody who maybe has only seen the show in passing, I'm aware of that sort of reaction that, like, how on earth are you coming up with the answers that quickly when I've barely been able to read the words? But it's a reflex that I've developed over decades of being involved in this sort of thing. And you can analyze it very quickly. And your memory, if you're going about it the right way, is already primed so that you're, in a sense, already knowing what to expect a little bit.
Hi, David. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Mark. Great to be here.
I'm great to have you here. I've been waiting to talk to you. You are now the director of international academic competitions. You're a
That's right.
19-time Jeopardy champion, and you're on a mission to be able to spread collegiate level, high school level quiz games throughout the world. Tell me a little bit about how this process got started in the first place.
Sure, Mark. When I was myself in high school, I was the captain of my high school's quiz bowl team, which is academic with a buzzer system. A little bit like Jeopardy, if you're familiar with that. But of course, the answers are in the form of questions. It's just standard questions on academic topics of the sort that typically come up in a high school education. Branches out to other subjects as well, a little bit of general knowledge. But in any case, I had a tremendous experience with that when I was in high school. I really used it as a springboard to not only reinforce what I was learning in the classroom, but also go out and explore subjects that I didn't know as much about, but were coming up in the questions. And so that got me into everything from British Romantic poetry to geology to furthering my interests that were already there in history and geography, especially. And one of the great things about putting an education like that in your mind is that the whole trick of quiz competitions is how well can you recall it from your long-term memory. And if you take it seriously and do it the way that you really should, if you're a serious player, you'll get all of this information into your long-term memory, which is very different from most coursework you do as a student, which is all about just one exam. And then once you take that exam, you've got to study other material for the next exam. Think of quiz competitions much more as a test on everything, or almost everything, every time you go up to bat. And is a little bit difficult for people who have never been involved in this universe to comprehend from the outset is that, yeah, we're just like normal people. We're not savants. We're not any big time Jeopardy winners. Generally speaking, they're all just players like me who came up through the ranks of Quiz Bowl tournaments. And we all got all of this information into our long term memories because we were studying for it like a serious high school athlete would train for their sport. And that enabled me when I went on Jeopardy to do really well because it was just right there in my long-term memory where I had left it back in high school when I was studying to do well in the quiz tournaments.
Interesting. This is so thought provoking for me because when I think about the impact or the power that lies with committing information to long term memory so it stays there for a very long time, the implications of usage of that skill set is endless. No?
Absolutely.
And for somebody who is listening to this and they're looking at David and they're looking at a 19-time champion, somebody you don't think you're special at all, but for the rest of us, you are. We're thinking, why not go for physics? Why not go and solve the problems of the world? Why stick to the quiz world? What is the allure of the gaming and the quizzing aspect of things that has kept you in there alive and fresh and excited so many years later?
Currently, in my position as executive director of international academic competitions, I really have the best of both worlds because at all the tournaments that I direct, I'm refreshing all of that information myself while I'm reading the questions or editing the questions and all that. But above everything, I really just enjoy the interaction with the kids and seeing them get excited about all of these different subjects and learning all of this information that can be, frankly, really useful in so many different contexts. The world is itself just one of them. But real life has tremendous applications, as you're alluding to here, whether you're reading a newspaper and trying to make sense of what's going on in the world, if you're meeting somebody from a different part of the world and you want to be able to have some background that you can show them that, hey, I know a little bit about where you're from and what's going on there. And if you're thinking of a research topic, right? So physics is a perfect perfect example. If you come out of high school quiz bowl with a solid science background, you'll be able to better come up with topics that would be good ones to research independently when you're in college or beyond. So the number of practical applications that otherwise all of this disjointed information has are really endless, as you say. So quizzing is a great way to help build that foundation, but then of course it's all about how you apply it going on in life.
Let's talk a little bit about the practicality of the challenges that you might face when encountering young minds. Due to social media, the way things are taught from videos, some say people's attention span is shortest than it's ever been, right? Kids these days can't concentrate on anything. So when you're working with a set of kids who are on the exact other end of the spectrum, where they're memorizing information for such long term, what do you think are the personality traits that cause them to be able to stick with something this difficult when majority of the population is having trouble focusing for a minute?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the difficulty is really all in the eye of the beholder, right? If you're just getting started with quiz competitions or quizzing on a serious basis, it can really look intimidating because obviously the potential number of things that could get asked about it is pretty much infinite. But honestly, I think we all know to a certain extent what we don't know. And what I mean by that is think of things that you've heard a little bit about, but you're not really that familiar with them and you want to be able to put them in better context. Or maybe you've heard of a particular person who's famous in a particular field, but you know that they're famous, you know that there's somebody who you should know something about, but you don't quite know what that is yet. Quizzing is an invitation to do that research and delve into it. And I think if you have that initial curiosity and that spark to learn, then all of this becomes a wonderful way to elaborate on your own education. And it's not a chore of just rote memorization. I think virtually nobody who's gone on to good success in quizzing whether on game shows or whether just in high school quiz tournaments, looks at it quite as just a slog. I think we all come at this with some intellectual curiosity, and then we're able to build on that. And that just opens more doors. And going down those rabbit holes can be all sorts of fun. And when you realize what you're doing is building your memory skills at the same time, you almost have to take a step back and realize what that's going on because it can be just enjoyable if you've got the curiosity and the spark to get started with it. I think the biggest thing really is, do you have a desire to learn a little bit? And it doesn't necessarily have to be about theoretical physics or ancient epic poetry. It could be even just classic movies. It can be classic cars. Pretty much anything that you can come up with is worth learning about in its own way. Take whatever subject you have a little bit of an interest in and then just go to town with it. That's really what it's all about. I think my success in this has been largely due to the fact that I have just a very wide-ranging intellectual curiosity. I'm not the sort of person who really is ever going to want to get a PhD or become a professor in a specific field where I'm writing journal articles that are absolutely at the cutting edge of human knowledge on the one hand, but that maybe only 10 people are qualified to read about. I want to have that general background so that no matter who I meet in life, I can share a little bit with them and know a little bit about where they're from. So
Wow.
I think that's how I would approach it.
Yeah. I love how behind all of this, there is still a vein of curiosity and fun. And we know that most people who go farthest in life have both of those characteristics in them. It's impossible to be good at something, great at something, if you're not having fun with it. And if you don't
Yep.
have this endless curiosity that makes you want to learn more and more. When we see Jeopardy, we see savants come on screen and they're answering questions. I'm like, how do you even know this? I have no idea how you know this. Is it pure memorization, or is there something else that is happening in the mind of a Jeopardy player in terms of the preparation they've taken to get there?
Yeah, there's a lot that's going on, to be honest. When I watch Jeopardy with somebody who maybe has only seen the show in passing, I'm aware of that sort of reaction that, like, how on earth are you coming up with the answers that quickly when I've barely been able to read the words? But it's a reflex that I've developed over decades of being involved in this sort of thing. And you can analyze it very quickly. What's the category? What's the difficulty? And so I would expect expect certain things to come up, certain things not to come up. And your memory, if you're going about it the right way, is already primed so that you're, in a sense, already knowing what to expect a little bit. And that can get you your response a little bit quicker than your opponent potentially if you're aware of how to put it all in context. So the curiosity element is certainly a part of it. Having fun with it is a part of it too. But like with so much in life, if you can go about it systematically and apply critical thinking to the preparation and the techniques there, then you'll be able to be efficient with your preparation, right? Because there's certainly lots of things that, while interesting, are not going to come up on Jeopardy. And that can be anything from just stuff that we all know because it's like our spouse's birthday, for example, but obviously they're not going to ask about that on the show, on the one hand, or it can be just this is too in depth on this particular topic. I'm a lover of geography, but they're not going to be asking all the county names of counties in New Jersey where I'm from, right? There are 21 of them. I know all 21, but that's not common knowledge across the United States, right? So there's no need to review that material when you go on the show. So you really want to be in that sweet spot of, okay, what's the information that I think I should really be devoting my study time to? And then it's all about how you go about studying. It's not just a matter of reading notes or reading trivia questions. It's flashcarding. It's being efficient with that process. It's when you have a free moment, you're standing online somewhere, waiting for somebody, just review it in your mind. And it helps build those connections between the synapses in your brain. And that just helps get it into the long-term memory and helps keep it fresh so that you don't forget about it after you've been studying.
And this makes sense because even any of us that have gone through high school or college, we know that the textbook is this big. But when you're preparing for the exam, for a test, you don't memorize or study all of it. It's
Right.
knowing what could appear on the test and
Yeah.
what won't appear on the test. And
Right.
while knowledge is amazing, just because we're knowledgeable doesn't mean we'll pass the test. Being able to take the test by predicting the type of questions that could be on the test is the difference between an A grade and a C grade. So it's like similar what you're saying in terms of preparation for the game show.
Yeah, and that's where I think, again, the experience of having gone through quiz tournaments when I was in high school and gone about it really systematically and having done enough of it so that material got into my long-term memory, that's really the key difference between me and a more normal Jeopardy player. It's not anything like that. It's really just the fact that for 2 to 3 hours a day, maybe for the latter 2 years of my high school career, I was training for this. And a serious athlete would have done the same thing if they were a football player, a basketball player, really whatever their sport would be. Not like Olympic athlete caliber, but just seriously good at their sport among the other students in their school. But the thing is that while in the USA, almost every school is going to have a basketball team, right? Or a soccer team or something like that. There aren't those sorts of numbers for schools that play quiz tournaments, at least not yet. Hopefully we're doing our bit to change that. So just because there are fewer people out there, right, it means that those of us who do train systematically come into the show, whether it's Jeopardy or really any other quiz show, with a huge inherent advantage. Now that advantage is going to vary from show to show depending on what the show covers. We like to call that the show's canon, right? And every different show, whether it's Jeopardy, whether it's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, really any quiz show that's out there, is going to have a certain focus. Whether, even if they say the questions can really be on anything, there's certainly going to be material that will come up more frequently than others. Some shows are more academic focused, some are more pop culture focused, some are very specific. Sports Jeopardy now is a show in its own right. Obviously, you're just covering sports there. And on the academic side of things, because our quiz competitions really reinforce that, if you can come out of those competitions with all of that information in your positioned in your long-term memory, it's going to be a huge advantage because once things get into your long-term memory, then they stick there. And it's not just a matter of short-term memory for an exam. If I go back and think about what I studied in high school, even for courses I got A's and A pluses in, I don't necessarily really remember much of any of that unless it was the same information that was coming up in the quiz tournaments. Because every couple of weeks when I went to another tournament, that information could potentially come up again and again. And things that seemed initially very obscure became, in pretty short order, quite familiar. And think of it just as like learning a language, right? If you start learning a language, you're going to have all these thousands of words and all of these rules that you need to learn. But if you take it seriously, learning a second language is absolutely a skill that most humans are capable of doing. It's just a matter of putting in the effort and being systematic about your preparation and having enough reasons to speak that language as you continue. So you might be fluent in a particular language at a certain point, but then if you have no real reason to use it that much, then in time those skills will fade. But if you are able to stay fresh with it a little bit, and either through, even in the analogy here, it could be just something as simple as watching Jeopardy, right? It doesn't have to be going on the show and being a player or necessarily really studying all that hard. But if you're putting yourself in positions like that, going to pub quizzes, things along those lines, that'll give you opportunities to keep that information fresh as you go through life.
Love it. Love it.
And certainly if you read widely, same thing there.
Wonderful. So let's get into the mind of a Jeopardy champion, right? Most of us can remember your phone number. Back in the day when you had to memorize phone number, we were good with phone numbers. Now with saves in our cell phone, we don't even remember it. For someone who's listening to this, who wants to improve their memory skills, what are a couple of things that you could say they could start doing today that could potentially increase their memorization skills, recall ability, all of that?
Sure. So one little technique that I use all the time, and I'll show it to you right here, is this really old-fashioned technique of just writing things down. So I don't know if you can all see this for those of you who are watching, but this is a list of Italian vocabulary words. So I am teaching myself Italian at the moment. I love traveling to Italy. I have a few friends from there, and I'm making a midlife crisis out of it, I suppose, in trying to learn Italian. But it's true that you really will activate your memory better if you write things down. And I really mean write things down, not just like type up notes on a laptop or on a smartphone, but really the act of writing things down. They've done cognitive psychology studies have shown that builds memory in a way that just typing things out does not. So if you take notes like that, even if it's things that you think in the moment, I find that's a good topic or good technique. And then you got to review it, of course. It's not just a matter of writing it down the first time, but going back and through your notes and just for 30 seconds here, 2 minutes there, not like long, extended, really intense study sessions, but just keeping those words fresh in your mind. That can really help. Another technique that I would really recommend for those of you who might be interested in being on Jeopardy is that there's a wonderful archive of hundreds of thousands of past clues that the show has used. And they're maintained on a website called Jeopardy Archive. And the website is just j-archive.com. The show's well aware of this. They're cool with it's just maintained by fans of the show. And it is a phenomenal study resource because it's a searchable database for all of the past questions that have come up on the show on any given topic. So let's say, for example, you're not really a fan of classic rock, but you've heard of this band called the Rolling Stones, and you know that they're a pretty big deal. So you want to go find out, okay, what are the sort of things that I need to know about the Rolling Stones if I want to be able to get those questions correct when I'm on the show. And you can just type Rolling Stones into the Jeopardy archive, and it will show you over the years all the clues that have come up with the Rolling Stones as the correct question. I should say, since this is Jeopardy, right? And so that way, even if you're not a fan of their music, right, you can say, okay, I can't get no satisfaction. That keeps coming up in the questions. Give me shelter. Okay, that's another song I see a lot here. And then, if possible, you can help build your memory skills by maybe listening to those songs just for a minute or two. So you have a little bit of a reference point then. And it's not all just this random information, but you can start putting a little bit of meat on the bones. Just going through that archive with that sort of technique and then writing all this down, of course, and taking notes and making flashcards with it, reviewing the flashcards, and just keep on doing this process again and again. But try and be, as you go about it and you're looking at questions on the Rolling Stones, maybe you'll come across, okay, they gave an infamous concert at Altamont, right? And that was a big deal back in the 1960s. So maybe start reading about that. And then that gets you into reading about Woodstock and then, or the Monterey Pop Rock Festival. And so you can just go from A to B to C to D, going off in different directions. And if you're putting these different topics into Jeopardy archive, you'll see how frequently they're being referenced, right? Now, certainly over the years, things will change, right? The Rolling Stones were probably, all things being equal, a bigger deal in the 1990s than they are now. Somehow they're still touring, octogenarians though they may be, right? By contrast, obviously, there were no Taylor Swift questions that were coming up in the 80s and 90s for obvious reasons. So you have to leverage it with, okay, this isn't just something that's come up a lot, but is it coming up with increasing or decreasing frequency on the show? If you keep your eyes and ears open and take the sort of new things you hear about that you hear just in the zeitgeist or the general pop culture world, and then put them into the Jeopardy archive search function, that'll help you a lot in terms of what you need to know and how to prepare for it.
This phase in your life when you have performed so well as an individual performer over the years, over multiple shows, started company that is helping push shows in schools around the world. What is the mission that you're working on? What are you working towards?
Sure. So, above all, I would say that we're looking to make learning fun, right? There's one article after another about how stressed kids are these days. They're overscheduled, they're stressed with not enough sleep, with too many demands on their time, with too much pressure to get into the right university or pass the right sort of exams. And honestly, if you are approaching quiz tournaments, I think the way that it makes the most sense, this is not just a chore or something that is a resume patter. This is just fun and putting a intellectual spin on it that's going to be help you get the information into your mind in a really enjoyable way. Because competing is fun. In our competitions, we have a buzzer system that we use for our questions. So kids ring in when they think they know the answer. And just that whole experience of playing and being quizzed on your knowledge is, of course, it can be stressful, but it's fun at the same time. I hope that for the tens of thousands of students that take part in our competitions in any given year, I hope they're learning all sorts of important things, but above all, I hope they're having fun with their new knowledge. And I also hope that they're using this as a way to find other students who are like them, who are intellectually curious, who have a lot of fun going on these deep dives into history, geography, science, or whatever their favorite subject may be. And then realizing that, hey, there are other kids just like me out there. And even if I may be the only one in my class or the only one in my school who's really enthusiastic about these topics, there are kids all over the world who enjoy this just like I do. And our competitions give kids a chance to build a community and to develop lifelong friendships. And that's one of the other best things about this whole world. And I'm a perfect example of that too. The best man at my wedding was my Indian American high school quiz bowl teammate. And we're still super close friends 25 years after we were teammates on the quiz team in high school.
Wow. The pursuit that you're on is not only intellectual, but it's also noble, right? You're helping kids learn better, have fun while learning, helping them not be stressed out. Individual schools, I think, would be interested in elevating the quality of education and learning within their environment. I would think that this is something every school would be behind. Are you running or have you run into any challenges where you felt that it's not well received by certain schools? And if yes, why?
I'm not sure if I would say it's not well received. I think more than anything, it's just that schools are incredibly busy these days. There are more and more demands being placed on teachers, on principals, on all sorts of educators about conforming to certain state standards or national standards. Teachers are under stress from parents, certainly at times, from kids at times. And so I think there's tremendous interest pretty much everywhere. But I think the biggest challenge is honestly just cutting through the demands on people's time. And I totally get that. I'm super busy myself. I have all sorts of hobbies that I are more or less saving for the future when I hope I'll have a little bit more time, but probably not. So I think that's probably the biggest problem out there. It's not so much that people aren't interested or don't see the value in it. I think at times it's just difficult to cut through all of the demands that are being placed on the schedules of students and teachers out there.
If I'm a parent and I'm listening to this podcast and I'm thinking, this is a great idea. My son, my daughter's school does not have this. The grassroots level, what are things that parents can do to bring this to the attention of the school? And then furthermore, bring you into the picture so that a conversation could be started.
Sure, that's a great question. I've got a great answer for it because we've got a whole list of our competitions for students in the USA is competitions.com. So I is in international, A is in academic, and then the word competition. So competitions.com. Outside the USA are for listeners in Asia, our website is just iasia.com. And if you go on those websites, you'll see that there are all sorts of competitions that do not require any sort of school involvement whatsoever. So parents can sign up their children without the need for there to be any sort of teacher or principal at all involved. Obviously, when a school gets involved, that makes it all the more easier. And particular for our team competitions, that's always a big advantage, right? If the school is able to find a coach who's willing to take this on. But not to worry, unlike some other competitions out there, there's absolutely no requirement that schools themselves are involved in order for kids to take part. If you look at our National History Bee competitions, National Science Bee, National Geography Bee, those are the big three in the USA at the moment. And those are all individual competitions. So parents can be the sponsor for their own children and get started. But obviously, if they see the value in it and they bring it to the attention of their child's teacher or principal, that's phenomenal because ultimately that'll help get other students involved and will benefit from their participation and they'll benefit from their participation as well.
So if a parent directly signs up the student through one of these websites that you said, what does the process look like? What kind of support does the kid get through the preparation phase? How does the kid know where to go to compete? Can you shed some light on the nitty-gritty of the details?
Yeah, sure. On our website, it's very easy to see on the menu bar, there will be lists of tournaments that you can sign up for. So you can sort by state or country, so you can see what's going on nearby. And we also have an archive on our own website of tens of thousands of past questions that are there freely available to practice with. We also put up study guides with the idea that this can help lead you to know what's going to be on some of the preliminary competitions that come up. And it's not that we're putting all the information that's going to be in all of the questions, but the study guides certainly give the students that take advantage of those a bit of a leg up in terms of getting started, especially. Really, everything you need is right there on the website, completely free. So there's tens of thousands of past questions in history, geography, science, other subjects as well. And what's come up in our tournaments before is the stuff that's going to come up again and again, particularly at not just the high school level, but the middle and elementary school level that we're very active in as well. You'll see that are only so many different things that we can ask about realistically, because we're going to want to ask about ancient Rome, say, in a history tournament. But we're not going to delve into some of the more obscure later Roman emperors, at least not until we get to maybe the last round at nationals, of course, right? So who's going to come up? The names Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar, Nero, maybe Trajan and Hadrian if you're getting in at a little bit of a deeper level. But on the whole, right, these are names that people have heard of, but now let's just learn a little bit more about them. And especially at the younger grades, if you put in just a little bit of preparation, it'll give you a huge leg up over the competition. And that'll maybe not get you the national title, but it'll certainly qualify you for nationals and put you in the running to at least make the playoffs, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked about your personal pursuit right now, something on the side, fun, learning to speak Italian. We talked about the company's pursuit to be able to get into more schools, make this more accessible, have more students be part of it. Is there a next step to the business that you're planning, like a next phase, maybe getting into a collegiate level, maybe doing something else? What's the bigger vision for the organization past just linear growth in the stage you are?
Sure. So we're now in our 5th year of running competitions. So over that time, we've dealt with all sorts of challenges in terms of how to scale this, how to build this out. Dealing with COVID, of course, was a huge challenge for us. Prior to all of our competitions were done in person, made us go entirely online. And now we have the best of both worlds where we have both online and in-person opportunities. That's great for students who are a little bit farther afield from some of our competitions. The online competitions give kids a chance to compete really regardless of where in the world they are. So I think we've done a great job of building out all sorts of different competitions. As I said, history, geography, and science are our three major focuses. Going forward, I'd love to eventually get into the foreign language space, maybe do a little bit more with Model United Nations. That's a very popular activity around the world for students, and we've just started running our first Model UN competitions over the last year. There's certainly ways that we can continue to grow in terms of developing more programs, but above all, I think right now our biggest challenge and our biggest opportunity is just getting more students and more schools into the program. So we've just hired our first ever full-time outreach coordinator. So certainly outreach has been a big thing that we've dealt with from day one. But we've never had somebody on our team who was specifically devoted to that and really that alone. And that's just something that we've changed now within the last month. I think within the coming months and coming years, our primary focus and our primary mission is going to be just to get more and more students and more schools on board with our programs. We've done a great job of developing the competitions, building it out, and now we're ready for more and more students to see what all the fun is about.
Love it. Love it. David, your personal journey, your life is a testament to wanting to continue to learn, wanting to make oneself better. And not only you have taken that and applied that in your own life, you've gone a step above and beyond and now helping others get better, especially at a grassroots level with young kids, starting from elementary students all the way up through high school level, running competitions at national level. It is an honor and a privilege to meet you. And it's refreshing to see people who have discovered a passion at a young age and are able to pour gasoline on it and make a career out of it. And not just that, create a business out of it. And not just that, create an impact out of all of that. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Mark. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.